Okay, this is our fourth teaching in this series of Asubha Kammatthana, practices of the unattractiveness of the body. And probably the last one. We'll see what happens tomorrow night for the one and I've got some more teachings from the canon and other sources to just read out regarding in what Ajahn Jeff has a very, very nice book for people who haven't seen it called Mindful of the Body, which is just a collection of teachings, basically an anthology of teachings related, some of his favorites related to mindfulness immersed in the body, and various chapters with various components of the practice of mindfulness of the body. And I'll do a bit more reading from on the disadvantages of attachment to the body, but also turn a little bit to some of the results and advantages that come from it. So to try and bring in a little positive carrot as well as the stick to get us through some of this stuff, because some of this is quite challenging. So just wanting to acknowledge that and work towards understanding the reasons why we pick up the Asubha practice, and also how to work it into balance with all the other components of our practice. The first thing I thought I'd just mention, and I looked for the resource where I first saw it, and I just couldn't find it. Maybe I didn't look hard enough, but it was an Ajahn Jeff part of some sort of essay or introduction around teachings in mindfulness of the body, but it's not in here, which is where I thought it was. And I couldn't find it by Googling. But it was just a description of categories around body image that I thought were quite useful as a way of conceiving of some of these teachings. And I'll do my best to remember how he phrased it, and apologies if I misrepresent it in any way. But a lot of times we hear about people kind of objecting to this practice of Asubha because a lot of people, particularly in the West, suffer from what we call poor body image. They compare themselves to all the ideals that you see in magazines and are propped up as what's considered to be attractive in the human form, and people measure themselves against that, and it's pretty rare that anybody comes close to those ideal images. And some people will develop a real sense of poor, what we would call poor body image, kind of disparaging one's own appearance, and spending lots of time trying to make it something that it's not. So people look at this practice and say, oh, well, this is just encouraging a poor body image, and it's just reinforcing these negative states of mind in regard to the body, and that's not healthy. It's not a healthy thing to do. Ajahn Jeff kind of teased it out a little bit in a skillful way by coming up with these 4 categories of. Let me see how he. That you can have a body image that's negative in an unskillful way, which is like what I just described. That you can also use, you can have body contemplations, or develop a body image that would be considered negative, but in a skillful way, such as these kinds of reflections on the unattractiveness of the body. Also, you can have a very positive body image, but in an unskillful way, when we have these ideal images of what it should be like, and we work towards that, and we develop these a sense of what we consider to be attractive in our own bodies, and support that in other people. So that's positive, but unskillful. And then you can also have a positive in a skillful way. So just again, to repeat, the negative body image that's held in an unskillful way is when we have these ideals and we identify so strongly with our bodies as who we are, that we develop this mind habit of self-disparagement because we don't measure up to that ideal. And so we do all sorts of things, people do all sorts of things to beautify the body, to make it attractive, to build it up, to make it so that all the things, are in the proper proportion, and that it is attractive to ourselves and attractive to other people. But that's all filled with kind of a sense of self-possession around the body, that we're making it into a very personal kind of experience and using it for those reasons. And that so it's based on that negative self-image that we have, and wanting to develop it into something else other than what it is. And then the negative but skillful is when we start to work with these images of Asubha practice, the internal organs of the body, and kind of trying to disavow ourselves of the notion that there is an ideal attractiveness that we attach to. And that's kind of, it's meant to depersonalize the whole process of what we consider to be attractive. So that's a skillful use of these negative images. And of course, the positive, overinflated images where we identify with them, and then the positive, skillful images, which would be viewing this body as something that is functional, that is useful. It's good to have a healthy body for the purpose of practicing Dhamma. We need to have a certain level of health and well-being to practice and take advantage of what we've got here, and out of kindness to the body and using it as a vehicle for spiritual practice and liberation, we look after it and we take care of it. And that's trying to develop a positive sense around the body for a skillful means. So I think keeping those in mind as we talk about Asubha practice, as we talk about other kinds of practices, that the negativity that one might experience with Asubha practice can be used to see things with clarity and reality, and to disentangle oneself from being so worried about one's appearance, because when it comes right down to it, all of us are just hair of the head, hair of the body, nails, teeth, skin, flesh. That's our common experience, no matter the small variations or the minor variations, or some things are more pronounced or bigger or smaller, or less of, more of. All of those things are just minor variations. It all comes down to basically the same stuff, and that's what we need to focus on when we're looking around us, when we're looking at ourselves, when we're experiencing our body and how we use it, just to try and bring it down to that common denominator. So I thought that was I didn't state it as clearly as he does in that teaching, but if I find it, I'll share that sometime. So a few more readings from this book, Mindful of the Body, on the disadvantages of attachment to the body. And this is from a short verse from the Dhammapada. All too soon, this body will lie on the ground, cast off, bereft of consciousness. like a useless scrap of wood. And also from the Dhammapada. Look at the beautified image, a heap of festering wounds, shored up, ill, but the object of many resolves, where there is nothing lasting or sure. Worn out is this body, a nest of diseases dissolving. This putrid conglomeration is bound to break up, for life is hemmed in with death. On seeing these bones discarded like gourds in the fall, pigeon gray, what delight? What delight? A city made of bones, plastered over with flesh and blood, whose hidden treasures are pride and contempt, aging and death. And this verse, set of reflections from the Sutta Nipata. Whether walking, standing, sitting, or lying down, it flexes and stretches. This is the body's movement, joined together with tendons and bones, plastered over with muscle and skin, hidden by complexion. The body isn't seen for what it is, filled with intestines, filled with stomach, with the lump of the liver, bladder, lungs, heart, kidneys, spleen, mucus, sweat, saliva, fat, blood, synovial fluid, bile, and oil. On top of that, in 9 streams, filth is always flowing from it, from the eyes, eye secretions, from the ears, ear secretions, from the nose, mucus, from the mouth, now vomit, now phlegm, now bile, from the body, beads of sweat. And on top of that, its hollow head is filled with brains. The fool, beset by ignorance, thinks it's beautiful. But when it lies dead, swollen, livid, cast away in a charnel ground, even relatives don't care for it. Dogs feed on it, jackals, wolves, and worms, crows and vultures feed on it, along with any other animals there. Having heard the awakened one's words, the discerning monk comprehends, for he sees it for what it is. As this is, so is that. As that, so this. Within and without, he should let desire for the body fade away. With desire and passion faded away, the discerning monk arrives here, at the deathless, the calm, the undying state of unbinding. This 2-footed, filthy, evil-smelling, filled with various carcasses oozing out here and there body. Whoever would think, on the basis of a body like this, to exalt himself or disparage another? What is that, if not blindness? And this is also from the Sutta Nipata. Pingya. I'm old and weak, my complexion dull. I've blurry eyes and trouble hearing. But may I not perish deluded, confused. Teach me the Dhamma so that I may know the abandoning here of birth and aging. And the Buddha. Seeing people suffering on account of their bodies, heedless people are oppressed on account of their bodies. Then heedful, Pingya, let go of the body for the sake of no further becoming. Pingya. In the 4 cardinal directions, the 4 intermediate, above and below, the 10 directions, there is nothing in the world unseen, unheard, unsensed, uncognized by you. Teach me the Dhamma so that I may know the abandoning here of birth and aging. The Buddha. Seeing people, victims of craving, aflame, overwhelmed with aging. Then heedful Pingya, let go of craving for the sake of no further becoming. From the Dhammapada. This unlistening man matures like an ox. His muscles develop, his discernment not. From the Theragatha. As if sent by a curse, it drops on us, aging. The body seems other, though it's still the same one. I'm still here and have never been absent from it. But I remember myself as if somebody else's. Also from the Theragatha. Full of the many clans of impurities, the great manufacturer of excrement, like a stagnant pool, a great tumor, great wound, full of blood and lymph, immersed in a cesspool, trickling liquids, the body is oozing foulness always. Bound together with 60 sinews, plastered with a stucco of muscle, wrapped in a jacket of skin, this foul body is of no worth at all. Linked together with a chain of bones, stitched together with tendon threads, it produces its various postures. From being hitched up together, headed surely to death, in the presence of the king of mortality, the man who learns to discard it right here, goes wherever he wants. Covered with ignorance, the body's tied down with a fourfold tie, sunk in the floods, caught in the net of latencies, conjoined with 5 hindrances, given over to thought, accompanied with the root of craving, roofed with delusions roofing. That's how the body functions, compelled by the compulsion of kama. But its attainment ends in ruin. Its many becomings go to ruin. These who hold to this body as mine, blind fools, people run of the mill, fill the horrific cemetery, take on further becoming. Those who stay uninvolved with this body, as they would with a serpent smeared with dung, disgorging the root of becoming, from lack of effluent, will be totally unbound. Now, I thought I'd do a, before I get into some of the advantages of mindfulness of the body, I'd do a reading from this post-commentarial text called Will My Cat Eat My Eyeballs? It's a book. It's, Limpa gave this to me. It's a book by a person named Caitlin Doughty, who is a mortician in LA, actually. And she's written several books regarding dead bodies and funeral homes and mortician's life and experiences from...
Is she the author of Stiff?
No.
That's a different...
That's a different, yeah, I think that's the Body Farms person.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's right.
I can't remember her name, but Caitlin Doughty is a mortician and the New York Times best-selling author of Smoke Gets in Your Eyes, like in a funeral pyre, and From Here to Eternity. She's the creator of Ask a Mortician web series and founder of The Order of the Good Death. She lives in LA where she owns a funeral home. And this is a series of very short little essays based on questions given to her by children. So there's a whole series of these questions that kids have asked a mortician, and I thought I'd read out one of them that's pertinent to our Asubha practice. And this question from some child is, can you describe the smell of a dead body? And her answer, well, just how dead are we talking here? If a person is newly deceased, they will smell very much like they did when they were alive. Did they drop dead suddenly, showered and perfumed? Then they'll smell showered and perfumed. Did they die after a long illness in a musty hospital room? Then they'll smell like illness in a musty hospital. What the body doesn't do in the first hour or so after death is bloat, turn green, and burst out with maggots. I don't care how hot and humid it is outside. This is not a horror movie, and that's not the timeline. We serve families at our funeral home who want to keep mom's body at home, but are worried about the odors of death. After explaining the not going to be swarming with maggots thing, we explain that they should start cooling mom down with ice packs if they plan to keep her for more than 24 hours. The reason dead bodies don't start smelling right away is because the classic, quote, scent of decay comes from decomposition, and decomposition emerges over several days. Remember, when a person dies, the bacteria in their intestines do not die with them. Not only do these gut bacteria not die, they are still hungry. Hangry. Ready to break down your body into organic material for other purposes. It's not just hangry gut bacteria either. The human body is teeming with life, a whole ecosystem of microbes. As they break down their brand new food source, your dead body, the microbes give off a gas made of VOCs, or volatile organic compounds. The prime stinkers here tend to be sulfur-containing compounds, which makes sense if you've ever experienced an especially potent and sulfuric, eggy fart. Sulfur is the culprit in many a stink. When specifically trained cadaver dogs are searching the woods for a dead body, they're sniffing for VOCs. These smells also attract blowflies, which have scent receptors that lead them to the body. The sweet smell of decomp, also known as odor mortis, tells them that the corpse over there is the perfect place to land and lay their eggs in the open orifices of the body. A short time later, fly larvae, maggots, are everywhere. Congrats, Mama Blowfly, on finding the perfect egg-laying locale. Two of the best-known chemicals in dead body aroma are the aptly named putrescine and cadaverine, after putrid and cadaver. Scientists believe these foul smells are acting as necromones, that is, chemicals that trigger attraction or avoidance around dead things. If you are a cadaver dog or blowfly, these smells tell you you found the dead body that you're looking for. If you're a scavenger animal that eats carrion, decayed animal, these necromones will smell like a delicious lunch. If you are a boring old human, say a funeral director, the smell will strongly encourage you to leave the room in search of fresh air. Most bodies that come into the funeral home aren't in full-on decomposition mode. They haven't had time to get there. To prevent them from getting there under our watch, we put them straight into refrigeration, which slows decomposition way down. But that doesn't mean we don't get decomps, the industry term for bodies that haven't been found for several days or even several weeks. Those who have smelled a decomposed body rarely forget the experience. I conducted an informal poll of funeral directors and medical examiners, asking them to tell me how they described the unforgettable smell. They offered thoughts ranging from like roadkill but way bigger, to like rotting vegetables, soggy Brussels sprouts and broccoli, to rotten beef trapped in your refrigerator. Other examples, rotting eggs, licorice, which I thought was an interesting one, garbage can and sewage. And me? Oh, how to describe the smell of a decomposing human body. What poetry is needed? I get a sickly sweet odor mixed with a strong rotting odor. Think your grandma's heavy sweet perfume sprayed over a rotting fish. Put them together in a sealed plastic bag and leave them in the blazing sun for a few days. Then open the bag and put your nose in for a big whiff. Though we may not have one single way of describing the smell of a decomposing human body, we do know that dead human smell is unique. Even though our untrained noses aren't likely to make that fine a distinction, researchers have found that humans have a singular chemical cocktail, our own eau de decomp. Of the smelly compounds found in putrefaction gas, 8 compounds give us humans our own special smell. Well, not 100% our own, or special, as pigs have those compounds too. Darn it, pigs, can't we have something nice just for us? Interestingly, humans were once much more accustomed to the stink of death, largely thanks to poor refrigeration and body preservation techniques. My longtime friend, Dr. Lindsay Fitzharris, studies anatomy and dissection rooms from the 19th century. You think the refrigeration units at modern-day funeral homes smell bad? Boy howdy, be glad you weren't in a dissection room 200 years ago. Medical students who performed the dissections, trying to learn more about the mysterious anatomy of humans, described rancid corpses and putrid stenches. What's worse, the cadavers were stored in unrefrigerated rooms, stacked like piles of wood. Body handlers witnessed rats, quote, in the corner gnawing bleeding vertebrae, unquote, and swarms of birds coming in to fight for scraps. The young students might even have slept in a room directly next door. In the mid-1800s, Dr. Ignaz Philipp Semmelweis noticed that new mothers who were treated by midwives fared much better than those who were treated by trainee doctors, who also handled and dissected cadavers. He believed that sticking one's hands into a dead body and then directly into a laboring woman was dangerous. So Semmelweis issued a mandate that hands must be washed between the two activities, and it worked. Rates of infection dropped from 1 in 10 to 1 in 100 within the first few months. Unfortunately, the finding was rejected by much of the medical establishment of the time. One of the reasons it was so hard to get doctors to wash up? The stench of, quote, hospital odor on their hands was a mark of prestige. They called it good old hospital stink. Quite simply, decayed corpse smell was a badge of honor that they had no intention of removing. So, somebody had asked a question about smell, contemplated smell as part of the Asubha practice, and I thought this was a good answer to it. There's some other good essays in here if you're interested sometime. Okay. So just to, again, kind of reiterate the point I made at the beginning of this evening, all the, there are reasons that actually we do these contemplations other than just to make ourselves kind of sick or repulsed. But to bring us to a clear sense of reality of what this body is. And it's mixed with, many other meditative, contemplative practices regarding the body too. In the first day I went over kind of the whole Satipatthana, and in addition to the 32 parts, contemplation and the cemetery contemplations, there are all the less dramatic ones regarding, like mindfulness of breathing, which is a primary one, mindfulness of the elements, contemplation of the postures, and various activities of the body. So that there's many ones that are more directly involved with establishing a sense of calm, and as I said, all of these can be used for insight as well. But then the result, the Buddha constantly presents mindfulness of the body as being absolutely essential, and there are many advantages to using all of these contemplations together, and in fact, in and of themselves can bring one to full liberation. So just a few little reflections and verses on advantages of mindfulness immersed in the body, so that get a sense of why we do these contemplations. And this is from the Theragatha. Kittika. How light my body, touched by abundant rapture and bliss, like a cotton tuft borne on the breeze. It seems to be floating, my body. A couple of verses from the Dhammapada. Simply talking a lot doesn't maintain the Dhamma. Whoever, although he's heard next to nothing, sees Dhamma through his body, is not heedless of Dhamma. He's one who maintains the Dhamma. They awaken always wide awake, Gautama's disciples, whose mindfulness, both day and night, is constantly immersed in the body. From the Udana. With mindfulness immersed in the body, well established, restrained with respect to the 6 media of contact, always concentrated, the monk can know unbinding for himself. From the Dhammapada. Knowing this body is like foam, realizing its nature, a mirage, cutting out the blossoms of Mara. You go where the king of death can't see. From the Anguttara Nikaya. Whoever pervades the great ocean with his awareness encompasses whatever rivulets flow down into the ocean. In the same way, whoever develops and pursues mindfulness immersed in the body encompasses whatever skillful qualities are on the side of clear knowing. When one thing is practiced and pursued, the body is calmed, the mind is calmed. Thinking and evaluating are stilled, and all qualities on the side of clear knowing go to the culmination of their development. Which one thing? Mindfulness immersed in the body. When one thing is practiced and pursued, ignorance is abandoned, clear knowing arises. The conceit, I am, is abandoned. Latent tendencies are uprooted. Fetters are abandoned. Which one thing? Mindfulness immersed in the body. Those who do not taste mindfulness of the body do not taste the deathless. Those who taste mindfulness of the body taste the deathless. Those who are heedless of mindfulness of the body are heedless of the deathless. Those who comprehend mindfulness of the body comprehend the deathless. So just a few short readings this evening to kind of sum up some of the practice. Open it up to any comments or questions.
I'm wondering what translation of the Dhammapada you're using, or what you're reading from.
All of these ones this evening were translations from Ajahn Tanisro, Ajahn Jeff. He does his own translations in his publications. So sometimes his language, some of the words he uses, the translations he uses are not so familiar to many of us, but if nothing else, he's very precise, I think.
I was reminded of sitting around Mary Curran's corpse in Casa Serena.
Yeah.
When she passed away, and how good of an experience that was. So it was, forget the time of year, but it was kind of chilly outside, and we opened all the windows.
Right.
And then I can't remember how long she was there. I thought it was 3 days, but maybe it was only 1 day.
I think we, the funeral home people requested no more than 24 hours.
Okay,
if I remember that
it was
right.
Just 24 hours.
Yeah.
We did an all night.
Yeah. Because she died. Was it late in the evening, or am I confusing that with Peter?
I think she died in the afternoon.
Maybe it was.
But then we sat all night, and then they took her the next day.
The next day, yeah.
I think they took her the next morning, possibly.
Yeah, and I think.
But almost no smell.
Yeah, for 24 hours and opening it up to the cool, it's not a big deal. You start to get a little bit of a scent. But,
ever so slightly.
Yeah. Were you there for Peter's death?
No, I wasn't here yet.
Okay, yeah, because I remember that as well. And it was nice too, because both for Peter, after he passed away, we all participated in washing the body and taking care of it. And then for Mary, Debbie and Mary's sister were there.
Right.
And I think they did that just to sort of be there and handle and get a sense of a dead body. Very stilling.
Ajahn, I'm wondering about like taking care of one's appearance, like
Did you say parents or appearance?
taking care of one's appearance.
Appearance, okay.
For the sake of others in a skillful way. Because, and I'm wondering if that might be different for lay people and monastics in terms of like, you know, if one has like really flaky skin or something that could be seen as kind of repulsive or like, you know, shocking or something. Like, should one take steps to like kind of make one's appearance not repulsive, you know? How does that kind of fit into just like kind of taking care of the body without becoming infatuated with it and without kind of falling into like wanting other people to think you are attractive or anything like that?
Right. Yeah, no, it's a good question because there have been situations. I think of at least one where you know, monks kind of go a bit overboard about trying to create a sense of repulsiveness around the body and go for long periods without bathing and showering and things like that, and start to subject their practice or put their practice onto other people's experience, and it's not so pleasant for the people around them. So yeah, and I think one way you just phrased it makes the most sense. It's sort of like you do what you can to not be repulsive to other people, but you don't, you know, go too far in the direction of trying to make yourself attractive to other people. So there's a difference. And it's like we don't, you know, we're not like matted hair ascetics where we just let the hair grow and don't ever bathe and let the body, you know, get real foul so that we're offending other people. But we take care of ourselves to the extent needed to just be clean, be neutral, not make ourselves a nuisance to the world around us, but without going overboard, like with, you know, lots of sweet-smelling scents and ointments and lotions, and you know, our hairstyle is pretty simple. That reminds me of, I remember once when I was in Anagarika and the phone rang and somebody had gotten the wrong phone number, and she said, "I'd like to make an appointment for a haircut." And
right over.
I almost said, "Oh, come on over. We have one style that we offer." But anyway, that's what we have. We have one. We just have one style. So, you know, but it's clean. You know, it's not easy for head lice to get too involved in a shaved head. So, you know, clean and tidy and not repulsive, but not necessarily trying to be develop a sense of attraction. The same with bathing and dressing in clothes. You know, we purposefully try and keep our clothes patched and you know, well attended to. And when they finally wear out, we make new ones. We don't go around, you know, with robes and things, you know, all tattered and half, you know, falling off and smelling bad. All of our requisites are like that. We take care of the body, just as I was saying before, Ajahn Jeff's, you know, explanation. You know, we have a body, and we treat it, you know, well enough to keep its functionality and make it a vehicle for contemplation, make it a vehicle for liberation, but to downplay the sensuality of it.
It's built into the 8 precepts.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
Not like the entertainment, beautification, and adornment is a very short translation for that. Nacha Gita Warita Visukadasana Mala Ganda Vilepana Dharana Mandana Vibhusanatana. That's like not using scented unguents and like makeup. It's kind of our jewelry, wearing jewelry. I mean, it's like, but you had like, even in the time of the Buddha, the bhikkhu Nanda, who even as a bhikkhu, he wore eyeliner, like, which presumably was attractive for men. Princes, he was a young prince.
Yeah, you see, like, some traditional old Indian art, and, male, female, doesn't matter, there's a lot of makeup and
facial art.
Yeah, facial beautification.
Then the Buddha, I think there's a verse of the Buddha, something like, when, oh when will Nanda stop beautifying himself?
Yeah.
But then he becomes foremost in, I think he might be foremost in sense restraint.
Oh.
Yeah, he becomes foremost in sense restraint.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard several different understandings on whether or not it's appropriate to wear a watch on the 8 precepts. I'm wearing one right now.
I think for 8 precept lay people, I've not heard that be a problem.
I think it's okay.
Our standard is that's why we all wear our watches on our belt, so that it's just something that's useful but can't be seen as any kind of ornament or beautification.
For a layperson, it's okay.
Yeah,
for
it's
a
not.
precept layperson.
It's just a standard that the monks follow. It's not so specific in the lay people's practice.
I mean, maybe if you were wearing like a Rolex that you wanted everybody to see or something.
Eric, you had your hands up there a minute ago.
Yeah, I was wanting to see if you had any input about the role that delusion plays in terms of the repulsive nature of the body, because it seems like it should be obvious that the body is disgusting. I mean, just based on the fact that we have to urinate and defecate constantly, and we constantly have to shower it and clean it and take care of it so it doesn't smell. Yet just to be able to perceive its repulsive nature, we have to constantly remind ourselves and meditate on it and reflect on it. So this is an area where I think like delusion really becomes clear. Like it's almost like this blinding force that's like causing us to not see what's going on. So do you have anything to add or like to explain that process?
Yeah, I mean, it's not much more than what you just said, but it's like, sense desire is also, it's a delusionary state of mind. It's this impulse, this force is very strong to want to seek pleasure. And the way that sense desire, particularly sexual desire, operates is with the underpinning, tendency towards delusion. So we have this great capacity to be able to see what we want to see and not see what we don't want to see. How to use, the mental factor of attention in an inappropriate way, or we have the potential to use it in an appropriate way once we kind of get a clue as to what we're doing. But that's the way desire works. That that impulse, that very strong, deep, ingrained, underlying tendency to want pleasure will control. It's really what's under control. What is the controlling force in how we use our attention and how we attend to anything in a way that kind of pushes away that which might bring a sense of unpleasantness, unpleasant sensory experience, and exaggerate, in a sense, by strong attention, strong force of attention, exaggerate what leads to a sense of pleasurable feeling based on just how we use our body and our senses. So it's just these underlying tendencies that have this extraordinary ability to co-opt what we put our attention on. we have to retrain that in a way that, doesn't reinforce the upwelling of desire when it comes, that kind of recognizes that rise in energy, that impulse, that mental force that says, ooh, give me something exciting, or give me something pleasurable, or something, fun, or enticing, or, intensely stimulating in whatever sensory door we're looking for. And then it grabs our attention and controls how we attend to this object and how we build it up and turn it into something that's very different from what it is if you've got a mind that's clear and just sort of seeing things with neutrality and seeing the unattractive things as well as the attractive things. And then that cools the whole process down, thwarts the delusionary process that's taking place, controlled by desire.
Something that comes to mind for me hearing you talk is like my mom has had a lot of problems with memory, and she went to have some testing done, and it turned out that it wasn't a neurological problem that was contributing to the memory loss. It was because of the childhood trauma and the way that she was redirecting her attention to avoid things. It was causing these big gaps in her memory, just the way that it's like this kind of delusion where her attention is being shifted, and she's has this kind of distorted perception of reality.
Yeah. It's a very strong mental factor that controls much of our experience, for good or for ill. In fact, you're probably familiar, the Buddha says there's no factor more important to develop internally, for internal development of the practice. There's no factor that's more important than appropriate attention, wise attention. The external factor is kalyanamitta, spiritual friendship, but the internal factor to develop that's most important is how to use your attention appropriately.
When I think about maintaining my body to use it for the optimal performance, I guess, sometimes I catch on the I guess intention to create longevity and create health. I recognize that that's important, and I need to use this body. But there's also attachment there.
Mm-hmm.
And can you reflect on that in terms of
Yeah, no, I mean it is the right motivation, to want to keep the body healthy and functional and relatively comfortable through diet or exercise or different things like that, as much as one can reasonably expect if the goal is to use it for, this reflection, this spiritual purpose, this, moving along the spiritual path. If that's your motivation, then that's certainly reasonable. The problem comes when we forget the reason that we're doing it, and it becomes more of a bit more of an obsession in some way. You get kind of, particularly I'm talking about particularly from an alms mendicant viewpoint. We here at the monastery are dependent on what people offer. So if I kind of feel that I'm not getting what I know I need to have this for the benefit of my body, I'm not getting enough, perfect non-animal protein source, or whatever it is that I particularly have a thing about. And if I find myself kind of obsessing about it or getting worried about it, or trying to control things too much, or trying to influence what it is that people are offering, then I'm kind of losing the plot a little bit. That's becoming a bit too overly attached to my particular idea of what it is that I think I need, and to just kind of relax that a bit and say, well, okay, my main objective here is to just honor the goodness and the generosity that people are giving to us here by providing what they think is, good food or optimal food or whatever. So, I'll make other people's generosity and their loving kindness, the major focus of what I'm consuming, rather than getting too involved with, am I getting exactly the right nutriments, which are my opinion of what I need. So it's a balance, and then to just be content when things aren't that way,
Would a bhikkhu disrobe if he were in a situation where he wasn't offered food and he was going to starve to death? I recall a story of a bhikkhu who was going blind and was under the Dhutanga practice of not lying down. And the medication, I think this was related to a Dhammapada verse, the medication he was supposed to take required that he lie down, and so he chose just to go blind instead.
I don't remember that story myself, but I'm not saying it's not there, but to me that was kind of like taking things to a bit of an extreme, because it was a Dhutanga practice, it wasn't an actual, Patimokkha rule or something like that. Dhutanga practices are optional, like the not lying down one is an optional practice. So, when it comes to, severely affecting the health of the body for the sake of some sort of, optional principle, to me that's a bit extreme. But, I can't answer for every bhikkhu. If it's if it's like the thing of like people not offering you food on a regular basis, would I disrobe? Well, I don't know until I'm in that position. I'd like to think not. I'd like to think that at some point some person out of faith would give me a spoonful of rice or something like that, and that I would be able to just wait it out. That would be my intention. What would you do, Ajahn Yanako?
I don't know, hope a squirrel offers me some acorns. Or
Right.
As if an animal offers you something, it's valid. There's at least one Ajahn in Thailand who's trained a monkey to offer him. But we're out of time.
We're out of time. That's how you get off the hook. 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 That's how you get off the hook.